Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm just going to give it a second for people to hop on really quick. And I do have my laptop so that I can read your comments, hopefully. Hopefully it'll work for me. It doesn't always work, but I'm going to get it ready here. So I apologize for looking down while I do this. So I just want to make sure that we get this going for you guys. I'm just giving it a minute for those of you hopping on to see who else is going to hop on with me live. Let me know you're here. I see Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. Let me know that you're here. Say good morning. Tell me where you're from and how is the weather. Here in northern Nevada, we are just inundated with smoke, and my heart goes out to those of you in California, my California owners and directors out there. I know it's just awful right now. The smoke is just so hard for us to deal with. So, I'm sorry guys, I'm trying to, there we go. Okay. Good morning, Alana. I have to give a shout out. Today is my Brandy's birthday. For those of you who've been watching, you know that Brandy is my director. She was my assistant for 10 years, and today is her birthday. So a very happy birthday to my girl Brandy. Most amazing, wonderful partner in business I could ever have. And one day I will do a live show for you guys on talk to you guys the difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. And Brandy and I make an amazing team in that I am the entrepreneur and she is my intrapreneur. So one day we'll do something on that. I think that would be really helpful. So good morning, Tammy. You're welcome, Brandy. You are the best. And we will make sure you have an awesome birthday. And I will see you in a little bit. I promise. I will be there. So let me introduce myself for those of you who are new to me. My name is Evelyn Knight. I am the host of the Childcare Business Coach podcast. I'm the owner and CEO of Childcare Business Professionals, which is a company I founded in order to help childcare business owners and directors take control of their center, find profitability, and get their lives back. As childcare business professionals, a lot of times our centers can just consume us. They take us over. They just become so much of everything we have to do that we just kind of lose sight on our lives. My goal is to help you guys get your life back, turn a profit, and just have a really high quality center that is there for the children. The children always have to be at the center of it. So I have to show you guys something really quick. And the reason I was late this morning to getting on is because I have this little girl here, my little baby puppy, and she got out this morning in my yard and I had to chase her around and trying to chase her around to catch her. It took forever, and now she's chewing on my tripod. So she is making life fun for me right now, but nothing more fun than having a little pug puppy. So I hope she brightened your guys' day, made you smile, right, for a Monday. So nothing more important than smiling on a Monday morning. Okay, let's see. I'm sorry, picking her up. I just lost my Facebook page for you. So on top of being the owner and founder of Childcare Business Professionals, I also own a childcare center in Nevada. I have actually owned 3 childcare centers, had an in-home childcare center, and we are hoping to open our 4th here soon. We can't quite make a decision here. Either we're expanding the one I have or we're opening, but we do have plans, don't we, Brandy and Alana? We definitely want to grow. So there we go. Okay. So today I am talking about boundaries, and I've just seen a lot of different people in the EC groups that I see, and just in my life in general, really struggling with setting proper boundaries. And I can tell you guys, without having proper boundaries, you will drive yourselves crazy. Being a business leader and trying to run a company is, Brandy says expand and open new. Yeah, I don't know if I can handle both, but we'll see. Maybe, you never know. You'll have to take over some, Brandy, if we do both. You know me, challenge on, right? So don't even challenge me to do that. So anyway, back to boundaries. A lot of times, and maybe I need to set a boundary right now, right? That's like a great example of, okay, set a boundary right now. You cannot open and expand in the same year. I don't know. Maybe I can't. We'll see. I know now you've got my wheels turning. So anyway, back to boundaries. So setting boundaries is so important in order to take control of your businesses, your personal life too. It's just as important to have boundaries. Part of the problem though with us is that we think we have boundaries. We think that people just should know, but we don't, right? We really don't establish these boundaries. And if there's something that you guys will hear me say over and over and over and over again, everything has to be communicated. We make these assumptions all the time that, well, shouldn't they just know? Shouldn't that just be common sense? Shouldn't they just know that they can't call in 4 times in 2 months? Shouldn't they just know that being late to work every day isn't okay? And as leaders, I know this is really hard for us to wrap our head around because, yeah, it just seems to me like they just should know, but they don't. They don't, you guys. There's people out there who don't know. And again, you guys are going to hear me saying, forget common sense. Forget it. There is no such thing as common sense. What you think is common sense, someone else may disagree with you on, right? So when you let go of the notion of common sense and you really embrace, okay, I have to explain everything, train everything, it really is a freeing process in that letting go of those expectations and really establishing your own expectations can get you to take control, right? So this is another reason that having documented, clear, concise policies and procedures is so very important to the health of your center, because those policies and procedures are going to be your boundaries, right? That is going to be your boundaries. So you've got to have everything. So think about your pet peeves, right? And give me some pet peeves in the comments. I would love to see some of your pet peeves. And think, and this can pertain to your personal life too. It's the same concept, personal, professional. That person that drives you insane. What are you giving them? What hold are you giving them in your life that is driving you crazy, right? That's where you need to set up official boundaries. You need to just, this is what I'm willing to tolerate. This is where my line is crossed. I will not go beyond that, right? There are some boundaries that are very, very obvious and are just somewhat universal. And again, remember, no common sense because some people don't have it, but you would think, right, that there are. I mean, and I can say in the early childhood world, a very obvious boundary that that should be unspoken is that we don't hurt children, right? If that was universal, no child would ever get hurt. Unfortunately, again, back to my theory of there is no universal common sense. That is a great example, right? There are people who hurt children. There are people who hurt children, which is why we still need to establish those boundaries. So that is just like a very extreme example, but I really want to show you guys how and why I say to you that there is no common sense. If it's not common sense to people that you don't hurt children, then what in the world is common sense, right? That is like the most obvious thing that there is. So so just think of it in those terms, right? So we do have policies and procedures about abuse in our, right? I mean, most of our states mandate it. I hope you guys do. If you don't, get a hold of me. You need policies and procedures about child abuse. Absolutely. Even if it's minor offenses, verbal, whatever, you guys have to have these things. These need to be clearly established. Do not take that for granted. But anyway, I digress. So think about that as an example, right? And there's like boundaries we have within our own homes. Like, for example, we have front doors. People ring doorbells. They knock. They don't just walk in your house. That is a boundary that is established. That is just something that we all know. That's pretty obvious, right? That we just know that. But there are some people who just walk in, right? So think about things like that. And those are what boundaries are. But in business, we need to establish boundaries, and same goes to your personal life. In those other things, like the things that you won't tolerate. And Brandy and Alana, if you're watching, give me some examples of stuff that my pet peeves that I won't tolerate that are just kind of out there that we've had to establish. I am having a total brain freeze on it, but I have so many of them. I'm sure you guys can think of some quickly. But, well, actually, I just thought of one. One of the boundaries that I have that is bizarre, which is a rule that my girls know, is that my center needs to always be tour ready, right? I don't like it looking like we live at the center. It needs to look like a business. It needs to always be tour ready. My tour packets have to be an exact way, right? The way my tour packets are, the order they go in, the way they look, to the point that I've created a manual for them on how to make tour packets. My girls literally have a manual. It's a notebook and I have this for everything. But it basically shows them, this is exactly what goes inside the tour packet. This is the order it goes in. This is how I expect it to look. I even have in writing things like, it's got to have clean photocopy paper every single time. We do not re-photocopy paper, which is a bizarre pet peeve I have. There's no, you can't photocopy the same piece of paper twice. It's just, they come out dirty, they look unprofessional, I don't like it. So that is a rule I've established, a boundary I don't let them cross, basically, right? So think of those boundaries that you need to establish, okay? The things that are really bothering you at your centers. Is it a teacher who doesn't really interact with the children, right? If that's something, then you need to come up with a boundary for it. You need to do something. You need to either have a conference with that teacher, document what your concern is, give them the support and training they need, and give them a due date in order to accomplish what you're asking of them, right? And as a manager, it's really important. And of course, there's those obvious boundaries that we all have. Like, you got to show up to work. You can't no call, no show, right? But those should be absolutely documented. All of them should be trained on. It should just not be assumed that people know. So one of the things I do want to talk about too is that boundaries tend to make people feel, I don't know, somewhat violated, and they trigger people. And it's ironic to me because a lot of times when you talk about boundaries and rules and you're establishing this stuff, people's first interaction is, or their first inclination is to say, oh, I'm going to challenge that boundary, right? If there's a rule, they want to break it, right? And so when you really establish those boundaries, or you're trying to coach somebody and you're establishing these boundaries, they get resentful. They want to try and push through it. They want to try and see how they can get around it. And I don't know what it is about setting rules and boundaries, but boundaries definitely trigger people. So I would just really, I'm sorry guys, it's like having a baby, what can I say? So I would just really watch for that. Watch for those triggers. Try and diffuse people, which I'll probably do a whole other training for you guys on diffusing. But just what I would suggest on that is, do not let people violate the boundaries that you establish. You have to stay strong. And the way that you do not allow people to violate it, the way that you stay true to your boundaries, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, is you set up consequences. You've got to have consequences. So whatever you decide to make a boundary in your life, right? Whether it's not letting your mother-in-law walk through your front door whenever she feels like it because you want her to knock, you have to have a consequence for it, okay? So, or whether it's not allowing a teacher to be on their cell phone in the classroom, right? It's not enough for you to just tell them, hey, that's not allowed. There has to be a consequence. There's got to be something that they know is going to happen if they continue the action, right? Otherwise, it's never going to stop. So establishing the consequences should be part of your policies and procedures. It needs to be verbalized. It needs to be somewhere, right? And so whether, even if it's just something, again, that there's not a really clearly defined rule that you have, it's just something that needs to be done, that is when you can easily just do a coaching conversation. Write it up though, and you can show them, okay, you have been spending too much time standing at the counter watching the children play instead of getting on the floor to play with them. And then you're going to coach. This is documented, right? I want to see you interacting with the children with rich conversations that are building on their learning. If we don't see an improvement within the next 30 days, you will be put on a probationary period. Okay, so there's a consequence there. If they get to that probationary period, then you have to say, you have 60 days for the training, the coaching, whatever, in order to fix this problem. Otherwise, we are going to have to terminate. And one thing that's really, really important with setting up these consequences to your boundaries is that you have to follow through. And I know that's really hard. When I'm coaching you guys, my clients, there's a few of you that I've helped you write your actual employee write-ups, right? We do what I call employee concern notices. And there's a couple of you guys that we've done it together on our coaching calls where I've actually helped you with the write-up. And every single time it just, I don't want to do this. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. And it is, because it makes us have to be confrontational. And it is very hard for us in ECE to be confrontational, because most of us have these big hearts and we work with children and we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But what I've got to say that I've learned the very hard way is by protecting other people's feelings, you're hurting your own center. It's hurting your other employees, it's hurting the children, and it is lessening your quality. So that is something you guys really have to really just get a hold of. Is, I know it's hard, you guys. I know it's so hard following through consequences and making people follow your boundaries. But it is absolutely vital if you're going to take control back. And the same thing goes, for just your mental health and making sure you have boundaries in your personal life. You have to follow through with the consequences. Otherwise, if you don't, you're never going to get control of the situation. And there's so many areas that you will end up having so much resentment and anger because the people aren't doing what you need them to do, what you perceive that you need them to do. They're not being the people you perceive that you need them to be, right? But to be completely honest with you, if you don't establish those boundaries and you don't establish clear-cut consequences, then you have no one but yourself to blame for your stress. So if you have staff that's always late, you've got your call-ins are out of control, that sits on the leadership's shoulders. You guys, that is the leader's problem. It's not the staff's problem. It's because you don't have clear boundaries with clear consequences that you're following through it. The follow through is huge on your personal or professional life. You got to follow through. So that's really important, those consequences, right? So what I would challenge you is, I'm going to ask you, what are your consequences when people violate your policies and procedures? When people violate them in your personal life, right? What are you going to do about it? You've got to have these consequences. There has to be you have to know it in your mind and communicate it to the person that you're talking to. Communicate it to whoever you're working with, right? Say, okay, this is my line. I will not cross. This is the line I cannot cross. If you push me to cross that line, or if you cross that line, this is what I'm going to do about it. Okay? And just make sure you're willing to go through with the consequence, okay? If you're really, really short-staffed, and you tell an employee that you're going to terminate them, but in your mind you know there's no way you can terminate them because you won't meet ratio, then that's not a consequence that you can really enforce, right? So don't make that your consequence. Maybe suspension or something else needs to be a consequence. But make sure that that is something that's realistic. Again, going back to your mother-in-law for your personal life. If your mother-in-law is just walking through your door and she decides to come in unannounced, what consequence can you realistically? You can't tell her for real that she can never see your grandchildren again, right? Maybe you can tell her, okay, I'm going to take your key away. I'm going to lock the door so that you can no longer just barge into my house. The other thing too, you guys, on that note, when you're giving people boundaries, it can come from a place of love. It doesn't have to be as hard, it shouldn't be harsh. And all you have to do is think about how you're saying it, right? When you're establishing boundaries. So let's use that employee calling in a lot. Of course, if we were going to counsel an employee on that, I would go to the rules, right? Here's my documented rules. But then as we're having the conversation, I am always going to come from a place of love and grace. And I'm going to come from a place where I tell them, I understand it can be hard, right? And maybe they're going through something that we need to really consider, but you need to stand firm. It doesn't matter, you guys, what they're going through, right? Doesn't matter. The center has to come first. Okay, we care for children. I tease my staff sometimes and tell them we're not a puppy daycare. This is babies, right? All the puppies deserve to be taken well care of too. But what I would tell them is, look, I understand. I'm sorry, she's chewing on my tripod again. My puppy. Wow. So I would just tell them that I understand that this is difficult for you guys. I understand that you're in a tough spot and that you really need to, it's hard for you to get to work on time every day. It's hard for you to be here on time every day. Unfortunately, the children rely on you to be here. Your coworkers rely on you to be here. And when you're not here, it sets the entire center off. It's a domino effect that ends up affecting all the children in the center. It puts more pressure and stress on your coworkers. So you need to be here every day. It is so important for you in order to really properly nurture these children and to help us create the best learning environment for these children, for you to be here every single day, right? And of course, I've mentioned something about, of course, if you need to plan time off, that's great, because then we have a plan and it doesn't put the pressure and the stress on the staff. So that's where you're still being firm. You're still telling your staff member how it needs to be. You're still communicating your message, but you're not doing it from a place of anger, and you're not doing it in a mean way. You're still honoring them, right? Now, that first conversation might be really nice and go that way. Second conversation, you may have to take a little bit, okay, we've talked, now you're on probation. If it happens again, by the last conversation, you might have to let go of that kindness, right? And, well, I'm sorry, you can always be kind. There's always, terminating people can even be kind. That's something that my husband was actually brilliant at once upon a time. I'll never forget watching him in our early days as business owners, watching him fire somebody and them thanking him for it, where he just knew how to spin it in a way that made them feel warm and fuzzy. And I just thought to myself, wow, I need that skill in my life. I need to learn how to, I don't know what it is, just be able to articulate that so well that you can fire somebody and they're just like, thank you for letting me go. So that, just always remember, just come from a place of love and kindness. You're not hurting anybody but yourself when you're filled with anger, when you are really just coming from that place of anger. And I've been there, you guys. It's very hard for me to lose my temper. I will put up with things for years, but when I do, and I'm done. And I've allowed myself to get to that position. But when I have nobody but myself to blame. And the reason I get to that position, if I ever do, which I haven't in years, is because I allowed it. I did not have boundaries set up. I was not following through with consequences, right? I allowed something into my life that filled me with the anger. So that's something I really want you guys to think about too. Is there something in your centers as a leader that is just making you really angry? And ask yourself, what boundaries am I allowing to be violated to give me this much anger right now? Where am I not honoring myself, right? You guys, we got to take care of ourselves. Without self-care, how are you going to lead a team? One of my favorite things to think about again is the old analogy of being on an airplane. And I say it over and over, but I'm going to say it again. If the oxygen masks fall out on the airplane, are you going to give the oxygen mask to your child first or to you, right? How are you going, and moms, we always say, oh, I'm going to put it on my child, of course. But how are you going to take care of your child when you're not breathing? You got to put yours on first. We have to take care of ours first if we're going to take care of our centers and we're going to take care of the people that we love. So that's what I have for you guys today. It's kind of short and sweet and to the point, but establishing boundaries is just so very important. Having those clear-cut guidelines that you're following through with, that have consequences, and following through with the consequences. Counseling on it, very, very, very important. So I do have a book recommendation for you guys on this one. There is a really, really great book on boundaries, and it's actually called Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. They also have, they have a whole series of books on boundaries. The book Boundaries itself is just like in general life, right? which is an awesome book. Whether it's personal, you can take it into your professional world, but if you want one that is specifically for the professional world, they do have a book about boundaries for professionals. And I don't think that's the exact title, but if you look up Boundaries by Henry Cloud or John Townsend, and I will put this in the notes, it'll show you like the whole, I mean, they have boundaries in marriage, boundaries for parents, boundaries, but the book Boundaries is kind of a good overview. So that can help you guys really understand how to establish boundaries and how to really enforce them and stay on top of them. So that's what I have for you guys this Monday. I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and if you guys, again, need any of those, if you don't have policies and procedures on, again, abuse and neglect, please let me know. That is just absolutely vital for every single child care center in this world. So happy Monday, everybody. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.